Hey everyone, a quick warning. This episode does have descriptions of violence as well as explicit language. It may not be appropriate for kids. On December 20th, 1985, Jack Murphy left prison and told the gathered media there that he was now a man of God.
God has used this system and this experience to help me get my priorities and my life straightened out.
Jack waved goodbye to his fellow inmates, now on the other side of the fence, and stepped into the car of Frank Constantino, the man who, along with head of Florida Corrections Louis Wainwright, gave him a path to freedom despite a double life sentence in 20 years. For Jack Murphy, a completely new way of life was about to begin. A new way of life that many would be watching closely. Because when Jack got out of prison, everyone had the same question. Had he found God? Or was this just his latest con? My name is Nate Scott. I'm a reporter and editor with For the Win and USA Today Sports. This is The Sneak. Before we get into how real Jack's salvation was or is, let's wrap up exactly how he got out of prison in the first place. Here's Sonny Gretsch again, the accomplice from the Wofford robbery. He also served time with Jack in prison. And Sonny knew all about Frank Constantino.
Frankie Constantino was a small-time thug, got busted in Miami. Got 35 years for the Adrian Thal robbery. And then Frankie went to prison and found God. But Frankie, everybody who goes to prison finds God just about. But Frankie really did. And he started studying, started preaching, and got real close to the preacher and ended up getting out of prison and becoming a prison minister. And Frankie ended up becoming a bishop and had the biggest prison ministry in the world. But he's the reason why Jack Murphy got out of prison. And got Jack affiliated with, I think, the Bill Glass Ministries.
Bill Glass played 11 seasons in the NFL, first with the Detroit Lions, and then as a standout defensive end with the Cleveland Browns in the 60s. Glass was a man of God even then, spending his off seasons attending Southwestern Seminary. He eventually worked with the Reverend Billy Graham, who encouraged him to start his own ministry, which he eventually did. In 1969, he founded Bill Glass Ministries, has been focused on prison ministry ever since. Glass developed a program where he'd get famous athletes and celebrities to come to prisons and preach the gospel. It was meeting Glass, Murphy says, that caused him to finally accept God.
So anyway, I go into the chapel on this particular Bill Glass weekend.
Murphy recounts that in the chapel, a pastor told a story about a man that was on death row, and that man had been executed.
The chaplain said, that's the beginning of the story, because the ground couldn't hold this man. And I'm thinking, oh God, here we go, Jesus again, you know. But I'm sitting there, and it's real quiet. He said, you come down here, I want to introduce you to him. And I'm thinking, well, once again, what do you got to lose? Don't have anything to lose. And I keep on thinking about that lottery ticket, because when I lived in Cuba, then when I lived in Miami, everybody's buying lottery tickets, lotto, and say, maybe what? Maybe what? Nobody else seems to be interested, so I stand up.
Murphy had his lottery ticket. He would put his faith in the good Lord Jesus Christ, as well as Bill Glass and Frank Constantino and Louis Wainwright. Those four men would be the ones who would guide him out of prison.
And I tell guys, I said, here's what happened. Here's what those fools did. I said, we went down front and we got saved. And we asked this guy, Jesus, to manage our life.
Jack dove in fully, attending prayer groups, working with Constantino and Glass, and selling other inmates on Wainwright's programs. And on December 20th, 1984, Jack's lottery ticket came through. After 17 years, Jack was released from prison to a halfway house operated by Christian Prison Ministries. And 23 months later, on November 10th, 1986, Jack was granted parole for life. The more we looked into Jack's release, the more we wondered, how the hell was this even possible? Was there a precedent for anyone in Florida walking away from 2 life sentences plus 20 years, and doing so in under 2 decades? So we asked an expert.
My name is Lee Johnston, and I'm professor of law at the University of Florida 11 College of Law, where I teach criminal law, sentencing, and mental health law.
Thanks to public records, Leah familiarized herself with the details of Jack's sentencing and his subsequent release. My big question here, I guess, how is it possible under Florida law for someone who received 2 life sentences plus 20 years to be paroled at all?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when Murphy was convicted, Florida had a robust parole system in place, and parole decisions were kind of made on an ad hoc basis.
In the days before mandatory minimums, the Florida Parole Commission could really do whatever it wanted when it came to releasing someone. It's arguably a more sane system than the one in place now for most offenses, but when it comes to a double life sentence plus 20 years, it's hard to believe that they granted parole to Murphy in fewer than 20 years total. But that's exactly what happened.
So it's crazy, but even though he was sentenced by a judge to serve 2 life terms and a consecutive term of 20 years, the actual amount of time that he could expect to serve behind bars bore very little relation to that.
With Constantino and presumably Wainwright vouching for him, Murphy was granted parole. Within a few years, he'd be working full-time for Bill Glass. He was out, free, and working in the name of the Lord. Still, the question remained, was it real? This winter, we went to Crystal River, Florida, to try and find out. Before we get to our trip to Crystal River, I want to give you a brief update on our hunt for the families of Annalee Marie Moan and Terry Kent Frank. As you might remember, so far we were able to track down a woman named Anna Lyles, who is Annalee's mother. We were able to find her because she had a space reserved on the gravestone of Annalee. We also found out that Annalee had a stepsister named Inez Lyles. I called Inez last week, and she answered. And while I didn't record our conversation, I did call my co-producer Anthony after we hung up and recorded that. Okay, I'm recording. Yo.
Yo, what's up?
All right, I just talked to Inez Lyles. It was a lot.
Wow, okay.
Okay, so I call Inez. Very cagey at first, didn't really want to talk, sort of asked me what's this about. And finally, I start trying to ask questions, and then I asked to turn the recorder on.
Mm-hmm.
She says, well, no, but you should talk to my stepmom, Anna.
What? Wait. Anna Lyles is alive.
According to Inez, Anna is still alive, 92 years old. So I freak out, and I'm like, yo, I would love to talk to Anna Lyles. How can I reach her? And Inez says, I have no idea. I don't know where she is.
You're kidding.
Inez Lyles didn't know where her stepmom was, but as we talked, she brought up a name we had seen in our research, Johnny Barnes. Barnes and Anna Lyles had lived together at multiple locations, and we assumed Barnes was her son from possibly a later marriage. He's 30 years younger than she is. But we were confused. Let's go back to my call with Anthony. We couldn't find any record of who Johnny Barnes' father was, or how Anna Lyles was connected to him, or what it had to do with the Lyles family. Inez cleared that up for us.
Okay.
Johnny Barnes is not Anna Lyles' son. Johnny Barnes is Anna Lyles' husband.
There we go.
Even though he's
30 years younger.
30 years younger than she is.
Gotcha.
Which, go get it, Anna Lyles, I suppose. Inez told us that she and her stepmom had fallen out of touch when Anna married Barnes. Inez was worried about her.
This is wild.
This is wild. But here's what's even wilder. At the end, so we get through all this. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll keep hunting for Anna Lyles. But I was like, well, Inez, we're on the phone. Can I turn on the recorder and just ask you a few questions? And she said, I don't feel really well right now. Maybe I will soon. But also, maybe you can help me by finding my stepmom.
Wow.
If you do that, then we can talk.
Inez Lyle's very savvy.
And just like that, we had a side quest. We would continue to look for the truth about Jack Murphy and the Whiskey Creek murders. But in the meantime, we'd set out to reunite the Lyles family and connect a stepmom and stepdaughter who were linked to this terrible crime. We spent a week in Crystal River with Jack. While one day of that trip was spent in the sit-down interview that you've heard throughout this podcast, most of our time there was actually spent in Jack's car, driving around his town, listening to guitar music he kept forgetting would mess with our audio.
Than anybody. She,
Is there if we turn that down? Perfect.
yeah. Well, that's sort of the soundtrack to my life is Latin guitar music.
Sorry, though. Continue.
Yes, moving right along.
Crystal River, Florida is a sleepy town of about 3,000 people an hour north of Tampa. The town's economic activity used to revolve around a nuclear power plant, but when it closed down, the jobs went with it. Now the big business in town is manatees, as in guided tours where you can see the large aquatic mammals who live in and around the waterways of Crystal River. Yeah, the roads go right to the water here, huh?
Yeah. And here's a little map thing on manatees and what they do, the do's and don'ts. Do not, it says. Protect our manatees, yeah.
This was our daily routine with Jack. He'd pick us up in the morning and he'd drive us around. All day we'd ask questions, trying to figure out the thing we just couldn't get a read on. If it was real. Any of it. All of it. The conversion. The changed man. Were we spending our days in the aging Mercedes of a man who'd been saved? Or were we just the latest victims of a ruthless, talented con man?
In here, well, there's a couple pictures. You see me, there's Roger Staubach, Bill Glass, and me while I was in prison.
Jack loves talking about his work with Bill Glass Ministries. He got to travel the world and meet important people. It's during one of these stories that Jack gets us in a car wreck. All right, it's a fender bender, a small one. See, Jack, for how frugally he lives now, he still has a taste for the finer things in life. We were driving around, and he wanted us to see a private golf club a town over, one that had million-dollar homes on it.
Now look at this. You wouldn't, around here, this whole area, you wouldn't believe that there's a whole HUD going on here. But this is it. Black Diamond.
Is it a private club, or is
Yeah, private homes and everything around here. We're gonna look.
Are they going to let us in?
Oh, we'll see.
We were close enough that we could make out a stocky security guard who was admitting residents and members up ahead.
We'll see how Barney Fife acts here. Hey, I have some friends that visiting. I just wanted them to look here and turn around, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you pull to the right, I'll have your signal on or flasher.
Okay, will do. Thank you, sir.
Then the wreck. Let's watch out. Whoops. Watch out. That's the sound of the security gate smashing down on Jack's windshield. Entering the club, there was a guest lane and a lane for residents. Jack had picked the wrong lane.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll send you the bill.
Jack characteristically took the fender bender in stride. He's good at that, taking things in stride. He's a master at remaining unflappable. As we drove around for days, my co-producer Anthony and I poked and prodded him with questions. We were trying to understand the man's faith better, trying to figure out if any of this was real. And that whole time he kept us at bay. We'd ask questions and he'd ignore them, or just start talking about something else. One of the few times I was able to get him to answer a question, however, was right after this little car wreck. It was when I asked him about people who make serious money off Christianity. When you see a preacher like Billy Graham, I think, I don't know a lot about him, but a mega preacher with a Gulfstream and a private jet. That's all right by you?
Absolutely,
you think that's
absolutely.
great?
Absolutely, it's an investment. They're going to sell it and get their money back anyway.
What do you mean by that?
It's an investment, just like a house, just like a car. That's an investment. And then what's wrong with it? There's a lot of people who are always looking for some scab to pick at, and that's one of them. Oh my God, he had a jet airplane. Well, why not? Everybody else has a jet airplane, but these guys are flying here, they're flying there.
Jack seems sensitive about this. People using Christianity for personal gain. It's a question that has dogged him personally for decades. In this moment, I thought we might be getting somewhere. Maybe Jack could offer us something concrete, something to understand his conversion better, something that would make us believe. Instead, like so many times before, he deflected.
See, here in America, we're so comfortable. We have so many luxuries. Look right now, nice road, isn't it? Middle of nowhere. Yeah, nice golf course, right? And so we're comfortable. We're like a bunch of kids that had been pampered. But the world is an evil, evil, evil place. Today, all over the world, even here in our wonderful, pampered world that we live in, there's evil stuff going to happen. So I don't worry about those people that are doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. That's not my business. My business is to do what I do and try to make a difference.
Jack wanted us to know that the world was an evil place. And by telling us about Boston and the accidents that had befallen people who crossed him, it was clear he wanted us to know that, at one point, he knew that evil intimately. But when it came to now, about why he changed, about how anyone should ever believe him, he wasn't interested in illuminating much to us. Perhaps he felt there was no right way to answer. Perhaps there isn't. To try and understand what he really feels deep down, we realized we need to go elsewhere. We need to talk to the people who know Jack personally. Not the legend of Jack, not the man he is in front of reporters, the man himself. All right, we're recording.
Well, good.
I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourself.
My name is Eddie Siebert. I was president and CEO of Bill Glass Ministries between 2001 and 2006.
And outside of your work there, you blow things up.
I blow things down. The Army blows things up.
You work in demolition.
I've worked in demolition ever since I got out of grad school, yes.
We actually had lunch with Eddie Siebert, Siebert's wife, and a few others down in Crystal River when they happened to be in town when we were there. But Jack asked us not to record during the meal. So I called up Eddie a few months later to talk and try and get at the heart of the question that we still couldn't begin to answer. Should we believe Jack Murphy? When and how did you yourself first become involved in Bill Glass Ministries?
I had a really good friend here who kept bugging me to go see this prison ministry stuff. It was an experience I can't describe. It took me.
Eddie was a successful executive in the demolition business and was quickly asked to join the board of the ministry group. Later, he became CEO. I asked him what he thought made the group special.
Because I think the Lord was in it. Still do to this day. And Bill Glass was such a unique human being. When I wrote a poem a long time ago about I see Jesus in your eyes. When I look at Bill Glass, I see Jesus in his eyes.
For Siebert and the rest of the Bill Glass board, they valued Jack for his ability to connect with inmates in the prison ministry. He'd been on the inside, unlike many of them. He also had a unique social gift in any setting.
When Jack walks into a room, he rules the room. Whatever he's got, everybody knows it, and he becomes the center of attention.
I believe down in Florida, you said he was adaptable, no matter if he's in a room with a governor or if he's in a prison setting. How do you think, what gives him that skill?
You know, I don't know, but I think that Bill Glass himself nailed it and said that Jack Murphy was the most socially mobile human being he had ever met.
Siebert also admired Jack and continues to admire him for his intelligence.
I've only met two people that I consider the smartest people I've ever met. Jack Murphy is one of them. The other was a NASA scientist who I went to grad school with.
Is there a concern, and I ask this not as a gotcha because I'm curious too. Is there a concern that someone that smart and that socially adept
Can fool people?
can fool people? Yeah.
You know, I wondered that too for a while. But I have long since thrown that out of my mind. And I'm going to tell you why. He's got real convictions, and he's not afraid to tell you what they are. I mean, when the ministry would do things he disagreed with, he'd say it. Not just because he disagreed, but because he disagreed for what it would do that he thought would harm it. To answer your question, that crossed my mind at first, but I have long since thrown that into the trash. Now, he's the real deal. I believe it with all my heart.
Eddie wasn't the only friend of Jack's that he wanted us to talk to. On the fourth day of our trip, Jack connected us with one of his old surfing buddies and a fellow member of the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame, a man named Bill Yerkes, who's better known as Balsa Bill. So my sound engineer Gustavo and I made the 3-hour trek east to the opposite side of the state, to Balsa Bill's surf shop in Satellite Beach.
And why do they call me Balsa Bill?
That's what I want to know.
Because I make balsa wood surfboards.
Bill Yerkes was a pioneer in the East Coast surf scene who made and sold boards all up and down the East Coast for years. His shop acted as a hangout and sponsor for many of the sport's greatest names, including Kelly Slater, who actually grew up hanging around the shop. Today, Balsa Bill's surf shop is stuffed to the gills with surf merch and Balsa Bill t-shirts, some of which have Bill's soft-featured face on it. Imagine Martin Sheen if he'd spent the last 40 years touring with the Beach Boys. Incidentally, Bill is friends with the Beach Boys. He has a book of backstage photographs he took on one of their early tours. One of the first things I asked Bill was how he got to know Jack.
Everybody knew who Murph the Surf was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was one of the pioneers in this area. He and Dick Catry, his buddy. See the picture up there? That's back in the 80s. Murph had just got out.
This was actually a bit of a surprise to me, but it makes sense. While they're both surf legends in the area, Bill is a bit younger than Jack, and they never actually connected until Jack was out of prison. So it's not like the two had a friendship to fall back on. Bill only knew him after he'd done time. You know, he served 19 years in prison. That ever make you nervous when you're meeting him? You kind of heard the legend. Were you surprised when you met him that he was the type of person he was?
No, I don't remember anything like that. I knew about his change.
Yeah.
You know, I knew about that. And so, and of course, you know, any kind of a change like that is, you know, there's a lot of skeptics, you know, and I'm sure there still are.
I do not mean this to be a private or prying question, but are you a very religious person?
Yeah, I'm a Christian. Oh,
okay.
yeah, absolutely.
And that has helped forge your friendship and the...
Oh, yeah, sure. In fact, I got more, I think knowing Jack brought me more into the fold. I mean, I've been a Christian since I was a kid, but I mean, that really, just knowing Jack and his energy, you know, he's just got this way of, yeah, it's genuine for sure. There's stuff you can't fake.
And that's what you say to people who say this is just his latest con in a long
Oh yeah,
line of cons.
Oh yeah. You don't think I've heard that? People say, "Oh, he just did that to get out of prison." No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Awful lot of jailhouse conversions, but other real stuff has to happen for it to happen, and it has to be miraculous.
Talking with Eddie and Balsa Bill, it was hard not to believe it, to feel it. Jack had found salvation. He had atoned for his sins, made his peace with God, and started channeling his many gifts for good. On top of that, Jack hasn't reoffended. For decades now, He's been on the straight and narrow, working in prison ministry. Talking with those closest to him, the message was clear. Since his release, Jack has led a good life. But there was one part of Jack's story we just couldn't reconcile. Again, this is from my conversation with Eddie Siebert. You know I'm not the only person wondering if this is all real.
Oh, I don't doubt that a minute. I understand.
Have you ever talked with Jack? I mean, I know you guys have discussed some parts of his life. Have you ever talked in detail about that earlier chapter of his life?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because with us, there were some parts he would talk about, and other parts, even with us, he didn't want to discuss. He talked about everything, but even, Whiskey Creek is a topic he doesn't like to broach.
What's Whiskey Creek?
That was the double murder or the murder conviction.
Yeah, he don't like to talk about that. Jack is ashamed to talk about the things that he knows was evil.
This is what I mean when I say that Whiskey Creek hangs over everything in this story. It's the fly in the ointment. Jack's narrative, the one he loves to tell, the one in his book, is of a suave jewel thief turned servant of the Lord. But that story doesn't work when you factor in the grisly murder of 2 young women, and a man who won't seem to admit to doing it, or ask for forgiveness for the act. Perhaps you can square it if you buy Jack's story, that he wasn't actually the one who did it, that it was the unnamed man who pulled the trigger, and Jack just cleaned up. But there's a problem with that story.
And that was another fucked up deal from the start. I mean, Jesus, they just screwed that up completely.
This again is the voice of Sonny Gretsch. He's talking to us about the murders at Whiskey Creek.
I mean, they go to a dock to fuel up with the 2 girls in the boat.
This was something Jack Murphy had never mentioned to us in our hours of interviews. Back at Whiskey Creek, there had been an eyewitness. Jack Murphy had taken the boat to a dock to get it refueled, just hours before the 2 women would be murdered. And someone had seen him do it.
And then they throw them in like 5 feet of water. And then when tide goes out, there they are. I mean, it was the stupidest thing I ever heard.
You never heard about a 5th person on the boat, have you?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, and I'm sure the witness on the dock who fueled the boat probably would have said there was, if there was somebody. I mean, he told them everything else.
Yeah. That's become part of the story. A 5th man, an unnamed 5th man.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe that.
In the final 2 episodes of The Sneak, we will dig to find out the truth of what really happened at Whiskey Creek. And we'll finally connect with the families of the victims of that evil. People who have never spoken on the record until now. The Sneak is a production of For the Win and USA Today. It is written and produced by myself, along with Anthony Pacillo. Our field recordist is Gustavo Moeller, and our music supervisor and audio engineer is Claire Morgan of Notterly. Researched by Emily Lacaze. Video and image work from Emmanuel Lozano and Alyssa Williams. Our executives are Mark Hyland, Scott Stein, and Kate Gutman. Special thanks to the USA Today podcast squad, Shannon Green and Claire Thornton, and the crew at Wondery, especially our marketing wizard, Alex Carpenter. Additional thanks to the investigative team at the Naples Daily News for their help with reporting, and the amazing team at Miami-Dade College's Wolfson Archives, who provided our archival footage.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out these other videos from USA Today to stay up to date with all the latest news.